This special New Year's episode of Dopey is brought to you by Oro Recovery. Located in sunny Southern California, in Malibu, Silver Lake, West Los Angeles, Oro was created by our old friend Bob Forrest and his friends Evan, Jared, and Bob. Their mission to create a place where addicts and alcoholics are treated with connection and compassion rather than control. Their staff has decades and decades and decades of experience in treating co-occurring mental health disorders, including SMI, and they make sure when you go to Oro, you are cared for like a person, not like a name on a piece of paper or a number or anything like that. They have amenities you wouldn't believe. They have the fucking surfing, equine therapy, the spiritually potentially transformative sweat lodge, and so much other good stuff. If you're fucked and you're willing to go to sunny Southern California, I highly recommend going to Oro. This episode of Dopey is also brought to you by our very good friends at Sober Buddy. And I know I've talked to you guys about the Sober Buddy app, and I think you guys should check it out. But I want to tell you today is that Sober Buddy has just opened up a crowdfunding campaign that allows you to own a piece of the company, which is super cool. You help them raise the money they need, and they give you shares. It's a win-win. You can purchase shares in the Reg CF offering and raise capital for future expansion. You can find the link to their campaign on the Dopey website, dopeypodcast.com, or on their website, yoursoberbuddy.com.
Dopey Podcast is proud to announce a very different kind of dating game show. From the makers of The Next Wrong Thing and It's Good to Be Bad comes The 13th Step, an ill-advised and extremely inappropriate experiment in recovery romance. The show pits the wits of one lonely and acutely horny old-timer who has more than 5 years of recovery to 3 insecure and vulnerable newcomers with less than 30 days clean. And the only requirements are a desire to stop drinking or using and the willingness to make the worst decision of their lives. If you experience joy from someone else's pain, then you'll love the 13th Step. Watch as these contestants go from lusty infatuation to crushing incarceration. Tune into this train wreck coming in the spring of 2019 on Viceland. Probably in a 4 a.m. slot.
Hello and welcome to Dopey, the podcast on drugs, addiction, and dumb shit, and Happy New Year. My name is Dave, and I'm joined by the the seldom heard but sometimes heard producer of Dopey, Sam. Welcome back.
Thanks, Doug. It's really it's a pleasure to be on the show.
Did you prefer when they called me Dan or Doug?
I think Doug's funnier. Dan, it seems like a natural way to screw up your name, but Doug's not even close.
Doug is like, they went out of their way to disrespect.
Yeah, well, I celebrated a birthday a couple days ago, and somebody on Instagram said, even though on your caption you said happy birthday, Sam, somebody said happy birthday, Max.
They said happy birthday, Max, to you?
Yes.
Yeah, that's funny how that goes. People get ideas in their head.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm, Dopey Producer Max to them. That's what they hear when they hear the name Sam, or whether they were taking the piss, which is actually what I think might have happened.
I don't think so. Because why? Do you think they were dugging you?
Yeah, I think they might have been dugging me, for sure. Yes.
Now, before we get any further into this podcast, I almost said broadcast, but podcast, I need to make a terrible announcement, which is that Dopey Producer Sam is going to go on an unknown. How do we say this, Sam? How do we say this?
Well, I'm taking I will be taking in the year 2022, or the upcoming year, tomorrow, starting sabbatical.
Oy vey.
A hiatus, if you will, of an undetermined length.
An extended hiatus of an undetermined length. So Dopey Nation, stand by, stand down, prepare.
Don't stand down. Dave, do you even know what that means?
It means get ready. It means get ready. Because you know
what it means when you say stand by and stand down.
I do. It means don't do anything crazy yet.
All right.
What I'm saying is that no one in the Dopey Nation knows who I might be bothering to salvage the show without you.
Right. Well, I think there's a whole world out there that can assist you in making the Dopey Show.
Well, hold on. Before we even get any further, it cannot be underestimated the value that Sam has had on the Dopey Show. And so first, before we say anything else, I thank you. The work you've done has been noble work. And I know I'm not always the easiest person to work with. So I thank you. And I'm going to give you a round of applause. Can you hear it? Oh, that's the theme song. Here's the round of applause.
Thank you.
So let me make it a little longer. Hold on.
Yeah, that's better.
All right. Dopey Nation, I hope you were clapping along. Now, Sam, now we are going to reflect on what do you think? It's like, how do you feel coming on to the last show of the year that is the last show before your extended, undetermined length hiatus from the show? How are you feeling?
Well, I feel there's, some sadness about leaving, because I know that that's going to leave a giant hole in my, days, because we would talk for hours on end almost every day, and have been doing that for the last 3 years and 4 months. And it's been great fun, extremely satisfying, and has been a huge component of my recovery. And so that's been great. But I'm also really excited about the future.
The year of Sam.
The year of Sam. When I broke the news to you, there were some things that I need to address in my life. And that's just my mental health and my physical health. And I just, I have to be honest with the Dopey Nation and you, is just, I've been a little angry. I've been, a little fucked up. I've been a little out of place. And I don't know why.
Would you say you've been out of pocket for yourself?
Maybe. For that is a good way to say that. Yes, I definitely have not prioritized, my wants and desires and needs, for whatever reason. It's not that I've been neglecting myself, but I'm going to be able to now focus, on happiness.
And you focus on whatever it is you want to focus on. You know,
Right.
you'll get to draw focus on this thing. And if anybody in the Dopey Nation doesn't know, Sam is also a recovering alcoholic and drug addict. And Sam and I met how long ago, Sam?
We met, and it still astounds me that you don't remember, but it was March 23rd of 2003 in Delray Beach, Florida.
So we're talking about 18 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
So 18 years ago, Sam and I first met at Renaissance in Delray, and Sam got to Renaissance, and like I think within the first few days of Sam being in Renaissance, I got into some major trouble, and they stuck me in your room.
Right, with the probably the worst therapist in the history.
No. I mean, you remember they actually stuck me in your room.
Right. Yeah. There were sort of weird apartment buildings that were adjacent to a golf course. I had a single room, but there were two beds. Yes, and you got thrown in my room.
Like for a night. I don't think I stayed longer than a night.
Mm-mm.
Isn't that funny though?
Yeah. I don't. Why me? And I don't remember what you did. To receive such punishment.
I don't remember either. I think I was getting phone calls from women or something. And I lied about it. I think that's what it was. I was considered a very toxic person in that treatment. But you know what? The interesting thing is, I don't really understand the idea of the butterfly effect or that whole kind of concept. But there is the cosmic ballet at play when whatever I did put me in your room that day, and no one knew that 18 years later we would have been making the Dopey Show for 3 years, and you would have become, an instrumental part of it, stepping in after Chris died, and it all happened built on that randomness.
Yeah, totally. I would have put money that we would have worked in some creative way in the future. I know that we had, stayed friends after that. We had, touch base periodically, but we were both in and out, for years afterwards. But we would always check in, and we would always throw out sort of harebrained concepts for some project or another. And, I think we always really wanted to work together.
Definitely. And the first harebrained concept after I got clean was the 13th step.
Oh, no, before that was the last resort.
No, the last resort we came up with when we were in treatment. But the first harebrained scheme we came up with after I got sober was the 13th step, which there was an ad for that on this episode.
Right. Which is, yes, in the beginning of the show. And I would love to know, Dopey Nation, if you guys listen to the pre-roll, as it were, in the business, to the ads before the main title music.
All right. So first of all, Dopey Nation, if you listen to the ads, send an email, dopeypodcast@gmail.com. Sam won't even know because he's out. He's out of pocket, out of the picture, but I'll know. So let me know if you're fucking listening to the ads prior to the music.
Yeah, and not to derail this conversation, but the ads have been, to sort of break down the process. The ads have always been a very fun, funny, and confounding process in the actual production of each episode every week.
What do you mean?
What do I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, doing the ads. How you are so insistent, which I respect, on doing fresh ads.
Why am I insistent for that?
I don't know, but I think if you placed, say, your Aloe now Oro ads side by side, I think they would time out almost the exact same length with very similar, syntax and emphasis, and it would be almost the same commercial every week.
So you're saying it's stupid? You're saying it's stupid that I do it fresh every week?
No, it's because I think you value your sponsors, and which I have respect for.
I do it. I'll tell you why I do it. I do value the sponsors, but what I really value is I don't like listening to a show and hearing it the same thing over and over and over again. I hate that.
Mm-hmm. And you don't listen to the show.
This show, no, but I would hate to listen to Dopey and hear the same shit every time.
Right.
I mean, that was actually an issue with me and Chris. leading up to the end of the show, or I'm sorry, to the end of his life, where it was in the last episode. We would fight about that opening music all the time, and how I wanted to add stuff before the opening music or change the opening music. And he was like, no, it has to be the same at the beginning and the end of every episode. And
Well, I think why I think that is because Chris was actually physically making the show at that point, and he wanted to streamline the process, right?
That's interesting. I never even thought about that. I think that is a big piece of it. And also, though, I think Chris, he didn't ever have any professional experience working in production, but he did have a good sense of the way things worked. And in his head, if we did each show exactly the same, it would be the pattern would comfort the listeners. And I know that was what he thought about it. I just always wanted different stuff. And when Chris and I started making the show, I didn't really know who might want to listen to it that I actually knew, but one person that I figured would want to listen to it was you, because you were a drug addict and an alcoholic and a producer. So you were somebody that I you were like, I sent it to very few people in the beginning, and you were one of the very few people that I sent it to. And I was kind of surprised that you liked it from the beginning.
Yeah, no, I remember you sent me, I think, the first 4 shows all at once. And they were very short. They were right around 20. I think the first episode was 20 minutes.
I think it's like 24, but yeah.
Yeah, they were all very short. So I binged them, and and I didn't know what the show was, and I didn't know what you were trying to do. But it was great hearing your voice, because certainly of the time that we spent together in Florida, we were such good friends. Not only were we scrubby addicts trying to, get through every day in a toxic fucking rehab environment, but we also worked together for months. We developed a great friendship down there. But it was really great hearing your voice. I didn't know Chris. I didn't know who Chris was. You didn't give me any setup on how you knew him and any of that before I listened to the first 4. And and I thought it was really entertaining, and it sounded like something that you would do.
Well, that's why also you were the ultimate person to come in to help me make the show after he died, because I met both of you in the same way, which was in treatment, and I think that's relevant. I think you understood treatment. He obviously had been to 16 treatments. But before we get any further into it, just for anybody in the Dopey Nation, you all should know that when Sam told me he had to leave, I had a nervous breakdown, and I felt very sad. And I knew that I needed to seek professional help. I needed therapy, right, Sam? What did I say?
You said, oh, shit, I have to call my therapist.
So I recommend and let you guys know that Dopey Podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp.com. It's BetterHelp.com/Dopey Podcast. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. I Zoomed with her too, just so we're clear. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Unload the stressors like Sam leaving and get some unbiased feedback. You'd be pretty surprised at what you might gain from it. I got amazing advice. See if it's for you. This podcast, again, is sponsored by BetterHelp, and Dopey listeners get 10% off their first month at BetterHelp.com/Dopey Podcast. That's BetterHelp.com/Dopey Podcast. Sam, what do you think about therapy?
I love therapy. I think some of my best breakthroughs of my, personal journey and my self-awareness have come from therapy. And I particularly like group therapy. I like it when people are kind, but insightful and thoughtful. I like that a lot. And I think that just also, furthers like the alternative recovery methods that are available to us all. If you're not getting what you need out of 12-step, and you don't have a friend that you can talk to. Like, I love professional help. I love the idea of it because, they're there for a reason.
Right. And obviously you've received tons of professional help along the way. And I want to get into your, anybody who didn't listen to a Sam episode before now, I want you to get into the addiction history. Do you mind?
Oh, well, yeah, I'm Sam. I'm an addict and an alcoholic.
Hi, Sam.
Hi, everybody. And I haven't said that because I haven't been to a meeting in years. But I am in recovery. And let's see. I think I had my first understanding that I was an addict in the crib. You see, no, I hate when people say that they were addict before they developed, that they even smoked pot or did anything.
What was your thing? You always used to say cracky McCracken. What was the thing? Cracky McCracken something? I don't remember.
I don't remember. Cracky McFuckstick, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, I think I had a very similar experience like everybody that sort of eases into what becomes full-blown addiction is smoked pot when I was 12, got drunk at 13. I think the first time I did acid, I'm going to breeze through this.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, it was when I was 15, summer when I was 15. And I started, I was dating or hooking up with a young girl whose mother was dating the Colombian guy who's sold coke. And so we had access to coke at a very young age. So I really loved the cocaine.
I don't remember that. You were dating somebody with a coke dealer father, and so when were you doing so much coke in the beginning? Like, how old were you when the volume of coke was high?
Well, it wasn't really until college, but I had access all through high school because I was friends with a girl whose mother was dating a Colombian drug dealer. And so there was always cocaine available that she would be able to go into the little, sterling silver dish and, take a gram without notice. So, it was very recreational at that point.
What happened to her?
She's around.
She's currently selling grams on the corner of Alvarado and La Cienega.
No, I don't think so.
There probably isn't an intersection of Alvarado and La Cienega.
I don't think Alvarado goes that far. No, Alvarado and Sunset, maybe, which is sort of the hood. But yeah, so it was sort of like that. So a lot of drinking. But I was the first person in my group of friends that transitioned to hard alcohol. In high school, I didn't like drinking beer to get drunk. I really wanted to get drunk. So I found that if I could drink whiskey or vodka or gin or schnapps or, whatever I could really get my hands on, I could get drunker faster. And so that's where I was at. My, alcoholism, was clear, while in high school. And in fact, I might have told this on Dopey, and I'm probably going to repeat myself a lot through this. But my sisters went to my parents when I was a senior in high school and said, "We think Sam has a problem." And my parents.
Wait, who did?
Two of my sisters went to my parents and said that we think Sam has a problem.
And your dad was in recovery, right?
My dad was not in recovery at that time.
Okay.
And so so both my mom and dad, said to them, "Oh, no, he's just having fun. He's a young kid, and it's just a phase." And I think that was very aspirational of them to think about it. But, they should have recognized the signs, because I'd already crashed a couple of cars at that point through high school, and totaled them. And, my mom's father died of alcoholism when she was 16. And my dad at that point, when my sisters went to them, was, a practicing alcoholic and prescription pill addict. So it's interesting that they decided to, sweep it under the rug. But
I think it's interesting even in itself, the idea of a phase, it's just a phase. And it's like, the question is, like, as somebody on the other side of a 15-year phase, like, how long does a phase go for? Or my phase was even longer, but I guess it was a 15-year phase of hard drugs as opposed to just, being a stoner or something. Like, it's like, oh, it's just a phase. But how long can you live with your child in a phase, right?
Right. And hope that they don't die. And, and the fact that I, had some really close calls, crashing the cars, that they didn't think that it was, more significant. So, God bless them.
Yes. Anyway, so you're in college and the coke starts flowing more.
Yeah, I went to Colorado, University of Colorado at Boulder, and I chose that school because it was in the top 10. It was ranked in the top 10 by Playboy as the best party schools.
Nice.
In the country. And so that's all I wanted to do. I really didn't want to study. I just wanted to go have a good time. I was actually in high school. I went to a boarding school. And so it was really pretty strict. So I had to, really be sneaky. And, I think I got really good at being sneaky and covert and all that in my drug use. And that, that didn't help me.
No, that's classic. That's the classic, like, hardening the addicts' systems so that when they're off and running, they're already in place. And in boarding school, like, there's a population of people who are going to be fucked up addicts, and there's money, and there's a lot of, like, room to be clandestine, right?
Well, yeah, you have to be clandestine for sure. But there are a lot of sort of like-minded people, or, young kids. My school was all boys for the first 2 years, and then it went co-ed my junior year. And so there were a lot of, people. I grew up, I have to say, with, some privilege, and I didn't know what that meant. And so here I am at this, nice school, and, I did not take advantage of the great education that I was being offered. And, which is a real shame. I got decent grades and I played sports.
I didn't. I went to like the best school in the world, and I learned nothing. I was just going over this with somebody. Like, I can,
right.
It's like it's rough to look back and figure out what skills you've come away from your life with after like a top-notch education. It's like education is wasted on the young kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. And I think that like the one skill is like how to get away with shit.
Right.
That's the biggest thing, and how to manipulate and how to talk my way out of stuff and deny,
Yeah. And all those skills are great in producing, getting through one thing or another, getting shit done, rationalizing why something is good enough, or procuring whatever shit you need for a show, like you would for your use.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, those skills, although not my, top skills and not things that I would necessarily find to be, the top traits in a producer or somebody in a creative field.
What would you say are? I honestly think that addict skills really align with producing skills. Yeah.
Well, I think, yes, I think naturally you would think that for sure.
Why do you say that?
Well, I mean, because I think that you really value your time as an addict.
Well, I don't in any. I mean, like, I know for me, my producer skills are very similar to my addict skills. My ability to improvise in a rough situation, my ability to procure what's necessary for the day at hand, my ability to work with what I have, my ability to put my cards on the table in either situation. I mean, I guess it's not necessarily producing as much as it's like life skills. Like those are all necessary life skills as well as producing skills as well as addict skills.
Right. No, I get that. And, that does make sense. And I guess, I'm undervaluing my time and the lessons that I learned when I was, in full-blown addiction and alcoholism. But I think, yeah, I mean, it's similarly, I think that I learned how to, identify, people, understand people, figure out people, and people were, a really valuable asset. because people provided, people were my conduit to drugs, when I was looking for them on the street or however, and maintaining those relationships, assuming they didn't get, thrown in jail.
What did your full-blown addiction look like?
It was sad, and I don't think too dissimilar to, most of our listeners is, really, so I got sober when I was 20. The first time I got sober, I had an intervention and went to treatment when I was 29. And in those years, in my 20s at post-college, it was a lot of cocaine and a lot of alcohol and a lot of, sleepless nights, staying up for days on end. I was incredibly unhealthy. I was really overweight. But I was a good worker and I was really well liked and I kept getting promotions. I think because I was skilled at, being people pleaser, but also I had a really solid work ethic that was, taught to me by my dad.
Was that the Hercules and Xena period?
No, that was after. No, this is when I was sort of my first jobs in the entertainment business as a PA, then getting my first jobs into post-production on my way to becoming a post-production producer.
When did coke turn into crack?
Well, coke turned into freebasing in that period in the late 20s, in my late 20s. And
did you get the ether and all that shit?
No, we did it in a total poor man. I can't even tell you the way. I had a college friend that was also in the entertainment business, and we had sort of parallel tracks. But it wasn't the ether. It wasn't the full blown. It was basically just cooking it down with, vinegar, I believe, and
which was basically the precursor for the Ready Rock.
Right, and making powder into smokable rock, exactly. So, but that didn't last long because that took me down pretty quick, and so, I stopped interacting with my family. My only friends were the people that I knew at the bar. So I worked at Paramount Studios. There was this little bar. I was just having this conversation the other day with somebody, a little bar on Melrose. And then my apartment was right off of Melrose. And so it was like this little triangle. So I walked to work, and then I would walk to the bar after work, and then I would, go home and pass out. And I just did this for probably about 3 years, and it was really sad. I never really, my dealers were close by, so I never really, left this, like 20 block area of Hollywood, for like 3 years. And it was really sad and tragic and, lonely, although I thought it was great. So, and weirdly, I kept getting promoted.
Why did you think it was great, and why was it tragic?
Well, it was great because my career was
on the rise.
It was on track, and I was, making pretty decent money, all things considered. But then, I would spend it. So, literally, I was broke at the end of every week. So it was paycheck to paycheck. Didn't need to be. So, that was sad. Had I had any sort of, financial discipline, or, if I just wasn't an addict, I, would have been on my road to, an early retirement, say now, but it was just sad. I didn't think it was that sad. I say that with reflection, just because how pathetic and how small my world was.
But it didn't hit those bottomy places yet. In that 3 year stretch, because you're working, or was it bottomy? Like, could you show up?
Yeah, I was just so exhausted. Just, when you're on a sort of a real run or just prolonged use, your body is thrashed.
Yeah.
Yeah, super fucked. And, I was eating poorly, if I was eating, but I was still fat. It was weird. I think it was just because I would drink so much, and I was always hungover, and
I can't imagine you fat. Like, when I met you, you were like the picture of physical health.
Yeah, well, that was later. That was later. So, but I was, and Yeah, there was nothing pretty about my life. There was nothing cute or quaint about it. It was, yeah, I think I don't consider that part of my life special. You're unique. I know it's just like so many listeners out there, that just got by, doing, drinking and using and functioning, but ultimately it was, my family that, helped me.
Intervened.
Yeah, they intervened for sure. And, I think I did tell this story before, but when that did happen, when I was 29, my sister had come down and we were communicating, and she said she really wanted to see me, but I had caught her in a couple lies. And so I just knew that I was having an intervention. So the day that I was supposed to come over to my mom's house.
No, you just told me that on the phone recently, but I don't remember you saying it on the show. So tell that story real quick.
Yeah. So my sister was coming down, and I was supposed to come over for a dinner. And but I had caught her up in a couple lies. And so I just knew that something was up, something was fishy. And so I showed up early.
Well, you said, I know you're doing an intervention and I'm going to come early, right? Didn't you say that?
Right. So I get to the house, and my sister opens the door, and she said, "What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here for a couple hours." And I said, "Well, I think you're having an intervention for me, and I want to put the kibosh on it. I don't want this to happen. And for the record, I think you lied to me." And she started crying, and she said, "We are having an intervention for you." So
you're like, I knew it.
Yes. So I come in the house,
and then you're like, I'm going to stay just so I can hear all the good things that you wanted to say about me.
Yeah. And then I'm going to split. So no, I was done. I really felt like I was done. Like, I don't think I could have gone, another month without like being hospitalized for exhaustion.
But hold up. Was the intervention successful then?
It was. So, yeah. So I stayed, and then slowly and surely, I had two really good friends that were longtime friends that showed up. And then my other sister showed up, and then the interventionist showed up. And so, like, I took part in the preparation for my very own intervention. I wanted it. I wanted help.
But that's like the classic addict who needs to control everything. You managed to control your own intervention.
Well, I guess I did. But it wasn't my intention. I guess I wanted to be part of, what was happening. I tried to, I was really done. I really wanted to get sober, but I needed that push, and I needed to feel that love. I'd been trying to get sober. I would go to AA meetings, and then I would go from there to my neighborhood bar, and get really fucked up. And I was beginning to hear the message, but I just didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what that looked like, and I know that everybody that's gotten sober in those early days, wants it, but they don't know how to get it. And so I guess, I would like to say that, it's possible to stay with it, keep going, stick with sober people. And
how long had you gotten? How much time did you acquire post intervention?
Post intervention, I had 6 years.
So we met how much later than that? 6-7 years later?
Yeah. So that was 8-9 years later. So then I had relapsed so I took a job. So I was good for 6 years. My career continued to rise. I was sober, and I was really enjoying it, and I was enjoying the work, and I was, getting promoted. And
was that the Hercules and Xena period?
That is that period. Yes. So things were great. So I took a job with this production company and moved to New Zealand for 3 years. And in the last year, I was in a pretty tumultuous relationship, and I was looking at, possibly not being with the woman that the first love of my life. And it was, it was a very fiery relationship, as I look back on it now. And I couldn't take I couldn't deal with my emotions. So I, looked to alcohol to,
do you remember that? Like, you have 6 years. What was the first drink after 6 years like?
The first drink was a glass of wine at a dinner party where, like when I first moved down there, I was young and, and I was totally like, brought into this Kiwi group of cool kids. And, but they rapidly found out that I, didn't drink or smoke weed or do anything like that. And they thought I was a real pariah, or at least that's how I sensed it. And I stopped getting invited to parties because I think I was just a buzzkill, and that didn't feel good. And so I was at this one dinner party and I just, I instead of putting my hand over the glass of wine, I let him pour it and then I drank it and, had another one and then left and went to the liquor store and, it was pretty on from there.
Do you remember that? Do you remember like you hadn't had a drink in 6 years, which is a lot of work and a lot of effort and a lot of maintaining. Then you're like, fuck it, I'm just going to have a glass of wine at the party. Do you remember going to the liquor store that day?
Yeah, that night. Yeah, I do. Because I wanted more. I wanted more. I wasn't drunk, but I'd had that taste. And I just, it was a real fuck it moment.
Right.
I technically it was a relapse. I probably, had I come out the other side of that night and just said, oh boy, that was a mistake. I guess I have to, start my new sobriety date. But I wasn't working a program. I wasn't going to meetings. I
think those moments, right? It's like, it's funny now on the other side of like sobriety, like I have a little bit of time now and it would be crazy to go out and say, fuck it and do that. And I think anybody like, but when you're on the other side of it and you're using all the time, like all I had was fuck it moments. All I had were like, how can I extend my using period moments? And like kind of staying true to the addict within as opposed to staying true to the sober person. And it's like, I don't know, like I think looking back on it, it's fascinating, like to recall those moments, when you're on the other side of it.
Yeah, it is, and I've had, multiple and relapses since, and there's really no accounting for it. I can't, because they came in moments of like real happiness and like real like celebration. Yeah. As well as like despair and sadness and loneliness,
boredom,
too.
All those things.
Yeah, all those things. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's you just gotta watch out. You gotta watch out. You gotta identify your feelings. You gotta stay connected. All that. That's my plug for sobriety.
When you look back on the whole thing, because obviously, like that was, I mean, I think that's a really relevant story because it's like 6 years in, which is a really big chunk of time, which is how much time I have right now. And the bottom rushing up at you out of nowhere, right? How bad did it get then? I'd like to hear this whole story.
Yeah, it got pretty bad. So in New Zealand. So after that, so I didn't drink every day for a while, and then I found out that a guy that I'd worked with.
Wait, hold up. Were you doing coke in New Zealand or drugs of any kind?
No,
you were scared of the drugs because it would have been too much trouble.
No, I'm going to get into the drugs down there. So there is no coke. There's very little coke in New Zealand, or was very little. I don't know what it's like now. But this was in right around the year 2000 when I was there. And but speed is prevalent. And so it turns out that a guy that I was working with was doing speed on the sly. I caught him. And he said he was super embarrassed. And he said, "Do you want some?" And I said, "Yes." Because I had been drinking, I'd already had that relapse. I was still drinking intermittently, but not alcoholically. But that was what set it off, is that I became addicted to speed. I was doing speed every day, probably for the last 6 months that I was there.
What kind of speed was it? Just like amphetamines?
Yeah, it was powder, speed. So
Black beauties, red devils.
They weren't pills that we would crush. It was I don't know what it was.
Right.
It was, and it was, there are these sort of Maori, islanders that live there, the local folk, that were, sort of motorcycle in motorcycle gangs, and they were the purveyors of, speed. Probably exactly like the Hells Angels were back in the 70s and 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that. I love the uppers, and because there was no Coke, that was was the substitute. And I would drink more because I would get so high. And I was still functioning, as still performing in my job. I think, but probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not. That's a real good self-deception. And then my girlfriend at the time said, I can't be with you like this. You need to go to treatment. So the show had ended, but I still had 6 months on my visa. So I checked myself into a little treatment center there for 21 days and sort of dried up. And that helped. And then my girlfriend, I was satisfied. And then, so we actually went and traveled the world for 6 months. And
you were sober for that around the world jaunt?
I was. And then she came back to the States with me. Her visa expired. And then the day that I dropped her off at the airport, and I went to the liquor store on the way home. And that led to about 14 months of crazy Coke that turned into, my crack addiction in that stint, and spent every penny that I had, and had to go move into my mom's house. And she was gracious enough to take me. And but then she was also horrified to see what I turned into. And then that led to a second intervention. And that took me to first treatment in Arizona, and then what we thought was continuing care, but it was also full-blown treatment at Renaissance, where I met you in 2003.
And those were the days, huh?
Which days?
Renaissance,
yes.
When you think of Renaissance, what pops into your head first?
Resentment.
Right. You hated Renaissance more than anything. You hated Renaissance like the Jews hated the Nazis.
I did. Well, I felt like I was being, oppressed. And I was being psychologically tortured. I felt, because that was we've talked about it before. I can't remember what the term is. Aggression therapy is, my counselor, who was a real fuckhead, would try to, he even told me, he's like, I'm gonna try to create these artificial bottoms for you to fuck you up, so that you're gonna have to deal with this, because I don't think you're done yet. And who is he to say that? Well,
even beyond that, like even just going over it in my head, like, they traumatized me. Like, they went after me. Like, no one's ever gone after me in my life the way those people went after me. And all I wanted to do was get high, which I did, and flee, which I did. There was no way I was going to rebuild myself in that situation. Like, how could you possibly rebuild yourself in that situation? All you can do is run away. I guess they try to limit your ability to leave. That's like their big move.
Well, they wanted you to stay in South Florida and build your new life there, so to introduce you to that sober community. And I did not care for it. I wanted nothing to do with it. But I was fucked, because I was broke, and I had to save money and do my best to get myself back to the West Coast, because I felt like every day that was passing by, so was my career was ending, because I was on a pretty, tidy upward trajectory.
Right. Well, that was real. I had a very similar thing happen. Like, if you want to talk about career, I lost my career to Renaissance in a way. But I also lost my career in a more clearer way. I lost my career to addiction. But But Renaissance, man, like, holy cow. Like, the shit that they did, I mean, they put me in the circle with all... Do you remember, were you in the room where they put me in the circle with my shit? Like, they put me in the...
That was the large group. Yeah. Yeah.
They put me in there with my guitar case and my stuff, and they pointed at me and they said, "This is the most toxic member of the community," at me.
Right.
And I think I loved it too. I relished the attention at the same time.
Of course you did. Yeah. Well, and I identified with you. I mean, we had already been friends. We had already had that night in the room, but we had already become friends. And I'm like, fuck these people. And I think I remember I don't remember if it was that day, but like you were told to walk home. You were like kicked out of the groups, and you were told to walk all the way home back to the residence. And like, and somebody asked, does anybody want to go with them? And I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah, I do. I want to get out of this scene and walk along the train tracks and, pick up garbage and.
But did they let you walk with me? I don't think they did.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, we walked home. Yeah, and found a shopping cart, and we brought a bunch of shit that I was going to make art out of. I don't know if you. Yeah.
I remember very little. But like one thing that we had always talked about, like, and in your few Dopey appearances, we never talked about shopping in Florida, and I always wanted to get that story on the show. So why don't you recap how we got our shit in Florida?
Yeah, so we had an allowance that came with the price of admission. So we had $65 a week to shop. So that was for everything. And,
cigarettes, coffee, food, toiletries.
So I would buy right off the top, I would buy a carton of cigarettes. At that point, I think they were $30 or $35 in Florida.
And I would too.
In 2003. Yeah. So that gave us $30 for food and, and coffee. So coffee had to be included in that. Whatever proteins, vegetables, frozen foods, whatever.
Desserts.
And that was actually a pretty good experience. So I think everybody should have a sort of a, home ec, crash course on, budgeting. And so, but anyway, we made it work. But the funniest thing is that, you, I think, only had one pair of pants, and they were cargo pants.
No, those are my cargo shorts.
They're cargo shorts. Yeah. And I would see your pockets, both of those cargo pockets were filled, but I didn't really put it together until we got back to the residence, and I finished putting the groceries away, go over to your little pad, and you're like, would you like some Starbucks? And I'm like, how the fuck can you afford Starbucks on $30 a week, and you had like 2 pounds of it? And it turns out that you would put like a pound of nice Starbucks gourmet coffee in each pocket, and you were flush with fancy coffee because you'd shoplifted.
Wow, I stole as I shopped every time, and my favorite bit was wandering around the supermarket, and it was like 100 of us. Like, how many people do you think went shopping at once? Like 15 of us?
15. Well, there would be one van, so either 12 to 15.
Right.
Yeah.
So there'd be 15 of us in the supermarket, and I'd be pushing the cart around. And whenever I ran into anyone from treatment, I would be like, "Sean, I haven't seen you in years. You look amazing." And it was like my favorite bit to do to anybody I saw in the supermarket from treatment. And I was like, I was 27, and just like I couldn't have been more immature. Stealing, acting out in the supermarket. I never got caught stealing in there either.
Never. No, it was remarkable. And I think that's where I developed my fondness, because Cafe Bustelo was the cheapest coffee on the shelf. And that's where I developed my love for Mexican peasant coffee.
Well, it's a good coffee. It's definitely bang for the buck.
Yeah, I still drink it to this day. Yeah.
So
yeah.
And I wound up relapsing on weed in Delray, in a classic relapse scenario, as you like to say. I got ratted out by one of my housemates, and then I knew it was time for me to go, leaving you stranded in Delray.
Yeah. Yeah.
You relapsed, though. You relapsed when we were there, too.
I did. So I got there on March 23rd, and my relapse, I relapsed on the 4th of July, and it was sort of this crazy scene. And yeah, I was in a halfway or men's sober living environment at the time, and my manager was super cool, but he said, "Look, you've got to go to detox for 2 nights, and then you can come back." And so I did. I went to the place called DAF, which is Chris Everett's Drug and Alcohol Foundation. Her brother had overdosed and died, so she developed this foundation. So I went to this crazy detox for a couple nights, and then I was allowed back into my.
Well, that relapse was horrible. I remember because it was the 4th of July, and like we were all by the beach, and you were on your bike, and and you showed up drunk as shit, screaming and crazy, and I remember it was very dramatic. Like I was trying to get you away from because there were staff people there too, and I was trying to get you away from like the scene so nobody would know, but you were too crazed.
I was, yeah. And then I got back to the sober house, and you showed up with a carload of people that were like, trying to save me, but it was already too late. So, it was just something that I had to get out of my system. I hated it down there. So I said, fuck it. And, there were plans for a group of us to be on the beach and watch the fireworks. And it was really nice. But I drank a 5th of gin after having not, had a drop for months. And got super fucked up, and surprised I didn't crash on the bike and, destroy myself. But anyway, all part of it.
And then that was 18 years ago. And, and how many times did you cultivate? You cultivated another 6 years, once or twice in there?
After that, I did. So after Florida, I'd taken a job as a cook in a hotel that I was given an opportunity in Florida. Then I was given an opportunity to go up to Maine to their sister restaurant or hotel. And so I worked in the kitchen there for 5 months, and then relapsed up there, had a shouting match with the chef, and ended up leaving. But at that point I'd sort of saved enough money, so I was able to like ship my shit and get a plane ticket back to LA. Where I thought I could move in with my mom again until I got on my feet. And she said, "No, don't you remember the boundaries that we'd set?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I do, but I'd forgotten."
Don't you remember that nice man at Renaissance who told me never to let you come home again?
Right. And so anyway, I moved up to San Francisco and lived with a friend and got a job and then basically I relapsed up there actually a few times. But still managed to get a job. Craziest fucking story is I was relapsing, and I went in for a job interview at an animation studio, and in my interview I was blacked out, and I came to halfway through it, and they thought I was hysterical. They thought I had so many great ideas to like propel these, this startup animation studio to like the next level, and they hired me. Unbelievable. And so I worked there and continued to relapse, but then was asked to leave my friend's house, and I moved into a sober house for 6 months, and it was the best thing that I did. I didn't need to go to treatment again. I just needed to be accountable, and this place was pretty strict and a bunch of good guys, and and so that really, really worked for me. And I went to a meeting every day for those 6 months that I lived there.
And you liked it at first, didn't you?
I did. I had a good crew, and there were some really good meetings up there.
What about drugs? Did drugs ever creep back in?
They didn't. They didn't since my time in
Florida. It was your last crack. I remember that story.
Yeah, Christmas Eve in Florida. So that was the last time that I did cocaine or crack. Yeah.
So you're saying you haven't done any mind or mood altering substance besides alcohol since Florida?
I have smoked weed. Weed was part of a couple of the relapses since Florida.
Did you smoke weed with me in Florida at all?
I did not. Oh, no, I think I did. We worked for that horrible interior design company that was part of what I was talking about earlier about working together. And we would have to go drive up I-95 to Orlando. And you had brought weed.
Yeah.
And I smoked with you in the hotel room. And then we went and played tennis.
You should tell the Dopey Nation of my incredible strength moving furniture. My freakish strength.
Freakish. Dave has a huge wingspan, and he's like sneaky strong. And so we would lift armoires and giant, disgusting like
sectionals,
sectionals and king size bed frames, like through tight hallways, and always managed to thrash the houses. That gave me great satisfaction. I know that's horrible to say, but I hated these people. I hated the people we worked for, and I hated the clients that we were delivering shit to.
The resentments ran deep. But I remember we would move shit into the house, and we would literally fuck up every doorway, and it would be like, whoops. And I was thinking to myself, this can't be the way you're supposed to deliver furniture. If someone delivered furniture to my house like that now, I'd freak out.
Oh yeah, dinging every wall and door frame, and yeah, we sucked.
So since you've been back in California, you smoked weed a few times, but you were just like, this isn't for me. Like, why didn't that stick?
Yeah, weed really stopped working when I was in my last crack run. The only thing that worked to get me down was alcohol, and weed didn't really have any effect other than just sort of make me a little foggy. And I was foggy to begin with because I was up for days on end. So it had very little effect, and it just lost its luster.
Right.
I started my drugging with weed, and I smoked it every day for years, from morning till night. And I loved it, and I still love the idea of it. But, I'm like you. It's like, maybe someday when we're sitting on the front porch, telling tales, maybe we can puff a joint when we're 75, and there's nothing to lose.
Right.
But
listening to the Allman Brothers, perhaps.
But there's everything to lose.
Right. So when you were in California, and you started rebuilding a career then, you built up a whole advertising company, production company, producing things. And that was like the kind of second half of the second half beginning of your production career. How much did alcohol fuck that up?
It hasn't really, and it didn't. So, just going back to that, I had to, I was so paranoid that I was going to lose my trajectory in the entertainment business with all my contacts, and sure enough, I did. My reputation was dinged for sure. So, I moved to San Francisco and reinvented myself. I still had those credits, and I was able to rebuild and restart and do a lateral move. But alcohol didn't and hasn't fucked that up. I think I've been smart enough to
compartmentalize your alcoholism.
To relapse in between gigs.
Right.
Maybe that's all part of it. Maybe that's all part of the alcoholic mind. The genius of the alcoholic mind is like, I can get away with it. If I relapse for 10 days now, it will take me 2 weeks to fully, bounce back. And then that's when I'm back into pre-production on whatever the next gig might be.
Right.
Maybe.
And I'm sure a lot of people in the field did that until you can't do it anymore. And then it was in and out until Dopey, right?
Yeah, it was 2013 was so I had masked 6 years. Again. So twice I have 6 years. Yeah. And then in 2013 I met a girl and I traveled she was actually an old high school
sweetheart?
Friend. Not a sweetheart. She was a little younger, but we reconnected, and I went and visited her in Florida where she lived, and I relapsed down there, and that sort of ended the run, and I wasn't keeping track of days or years or anything at that point, and so it was really like clockwork from 2013 to 2018, almost every 6 months. I think you were apprised of most of those relapses, or some of them, the majority of them. That it would be like a 10-day, anywhere from 5 to 10 day binge. And then, I would just hurt so much at the end of it that, I would stop.
I wasn't really apprised of it because we weren't talking that much. I only became apprised of it after Chris died and you were interested in helping with the show and you had one of them. And I was so like distraught over it.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting that you say that. So yeah, I kind of want to set the record straight on that, is that you had reached out to me
right
after Chris.
Right. No,
yeah.
I was struggling with the show big time. Like Chris died and I didn't even know if I could do the show.
Right.
And I was terrified, and I was very glad that over the years I would reach out to you and ask you what you thought about an episode or a string of episodes. And I always loved the way you would talk about it. So when Chris died, you and I had an extended conversation about Chris's death and how I felt and this and that. But then I was also very much like, I think I'm in trouble. And can you start listening to the shows? Because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing.
Right. And I had been listening, so I was a fan. And I was listening to it critically. I was listening to it with a different sort of set of ears, producer's ears, but not giving you that much feedback. But yeah, when Chris died, after he died, you did reach out and say, I want to keep doing the show, but I don't know how. Can you help me? So I do want to make that clear to the Dopey Nation that I didn't horn in. I didn't.
No. You were an incredible resource at a time where I was fucked. You know, absolutely.
But I have this weird feeling that I just feel like I need to, get it off my chest. Is that like I didn't feel like I wasn't horning in. I was.
But whoever thought you were horning in?
Oh, I don't know.
No. How could you possibly be horning in unless you were like dealing fentanyl in Boston in the summer? What?
Yeah, I had this weird feeling that I was being that I might be perceived as opportunistic in.
No, it's impossible. That's a classic negative talk. Gabor Mate, the stupid friend. It's not right. It's not relevant. It's not possible. What you were was a good friend to me and of assistance to me in a time that I really needed it. And then and tell me if I'm overstepping, but I think that's when Dopey was actually helpful for you also.
No, you're not overstepping for sure. I mean, obviously I've just said I stopped going to meetings.
Tell the Dopey Nation how much you hated meetings.
Yeah, I just would walk away feeling worse. My ears, I guess I had the cotton in my ears because I wasn't hearing anything that I wanted to hear. And I would walk out feeling worse than I did when I went into the meeting. And I felt like I wasn't connecting with any of the groups that I was going to. So I stopped going. And you could set your calendar to the times that I've relapsed. But when I did start working on the show with you after Chris died, it filled a hole that I didn't know I needed filled.
Would you think it was a God-sized hole?
It was, yeah, well, it's more like a pizza.
Anyway.
Or quart of ice cream. But, yeah, it helped me with what I didn't know that I needed help with, which was the connection to a community. And, I've never been a joiner. And I think that I always wore that as a badge of pride that, I don't need to join anything because I'm so independent.
Such an individual.
Yeah, but it's so stupid because, what all the lessons that I've learned through my time working on Dopey is that it is true that connection is the opposite of addiction. So, yeah, my time working on the show has really, really kept it green and fresh and made me realize that there's a gazillion people that are out there that share a very similar story and that are a lot like me. And that helps. That, makes me feel less alone in this world.
Well, the next thing is I mean, Chris and I made the show in a way that it was very easy for me. I didn't have to do anything. All I had to do was jump on I mean, Chris would usually drive to Manhattan, and we would bust out the equipment, and I would have like a shitty piece of paper with a bunch of shit written on it, and so would he, and we would do, between 45 minutes and an hour and 5 minutes, and I was done. And we would do like 2 or 3 in a sitting at that point. I mean, in the beginning, we would do 4 in the beginning. But then later, as the shows got longer, we would do 2 or 3, and then we would Skype one, and then he'd come back, and it was a very easy process. So when after he died and I had to take up the technical aspects, and there was no co-host, like we had to rejigger the show, and you were a huge part of that, like you and I figured out what Dopey would be. And how could we keep it interesting? And how could we preserve the vibe and all that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that we realized is that it couldn't be the same show. There was no replacing Chris, and with any kind of co-host. I mean, I think that we had entertained the thought, but we suddenly realized, or soon realized, that Chris was so awesome and special, and was your perfect partner. That there was no point in even trying.
Well, it was like star-crossed, because it was like it was his show, so he wanted to do it. He would drive to do it. He didn't have, he made it work for himself. Plus, he was the worst addict in the world who knew more about addiction and recovery than most anybody. So he was the ideal partner for the show. And then we kind of redesigned the show, like dealing with the handicap and like, what do we do from there?
Right.
So now we're like three years and change later, and we're looking back at I mean, like if it was up to me, you wouldn't take an extended hiatus and we would just keep going, because I like the workflow. It works for me. But obviously that doesn't mean it works for you. When you look back on the past 3.5 years, can you recall any of your favorite parts, or like what pops into your head first?
Well, I think that the thing that pops into my head first is you being approached by This American Life, and the This American Life
effect.
What do they call it?
The This American Life effect.
Right, which was true, which I think we're still receiving some of the effects of it.
You know what though, Sam? I remember pre This American Life, and I'm like, how do I get the show bigger? How do we get the show bigger? What do we do? Blah, blah, blah. And I remember when I sent the email to This American Life, and that's also when I kind of reached out to Emily Sullivan and Vice, and we started our Vice Wars and all that stuff. And This American Life hadn't even done the piece when we were doing the Vice Wars. The Vice Wars was all pre This American Life. And I remember we would have extended conversations about like, what the fuck could we do? And when This American Life came out, and it was February of 2019, the show changed. The audience grew, by tripled. Right. Do you miss the Vice Wars, Sam?
Yeah, I loved the Vice beef. I love. There's nothing more satisfying than really stringing along like a fake beef. I look at the Dopey Nation. I love the beefs, the fake beefs that, everybody has going on in there.
Well, the beef with the Vice beef was real beef. And if anyone wants to remember what that was, Vice, me and Chris have been pitching Vice for years to have them do Dopey with us as a TV show. And they like got back to Chris. I think they said, we're not interested. And then I wrote them and they said something along the same lines. And then right after that, they came out with a show called Dope Sick Nation. And Sam was 100% for sure that they had just stolen it.
Right. That they had ripped off the Dopey Nation and just, bastardized it and called it Dope Sick Nation. Which is, I mean, it's a fine title for a fake reality show. I mean, I think I had beef with that show because one, it was set in South Florida, and for my money, sorry Scott Wick, but that place should just be scorched.
Wow, wow.
In the recovery community.
Okay, keep going.
because I think I've said it before, if you send your child down to South Florida for recovery, you will get them back in a body bag.
Or just deranged or high.
Right. Or traumatized, like I think both you and I were from our experience down there. But anyway, I think that beef was, I was convinced that they had done that, but there was no way to prove it. And there was no real meat behind the beef, so to speak.
B Getz hated that. B Getz, who's a Dopey super fan, would write me and saying that we had to stop the Vice beef.
but it became for us internally, it became, humorous to us to prolong it in the way that it did.
Well, I like beef too. Let's look back at some famous Dopey beefs. Sam is like the most favorite of Dopey beefs. And whenever Dopey got stale, Sam would look for a place to put some Dopey beef in there. The first one that I can remember is when Sam decided to invent a lawyer named Eugene Meyerson to fight this beef with Vice. So, Sam, I'm going to play this old clip from 2018. You ready?
Ready.
Hello, I'm Eugene Meyerson with the law offices of Meyerson, Kaufman, and Schwartz. Do you suffer from both night and day sweats? Are your veins collapsed? Are your pupils smaller than a grain of sand? Is your dealer your only friend? Then chances are you're a junkie, and therefore you must share our outrage at the very disturbing revelation of a new television series called Dope Sick Nation, airing only on the Viceland channel, Wednesdays at 10 p.m. On behalf of Dopey, we are reaching out to all members of the Dopey Nation and are mounting a case seeking compensatory damages for the reprehensible malfeasant actions perpetrated by the show's distributor, Viceland, and its nefarious parent company, the all-powerful mega-corporation Vice. We contend that they did knowingly and willfully plagiarize the intellectual property and various elements of shtick created and performed by Dave and Chris. May he rest in peace. Now is the time to take action. We must resist. Will you stand with us, or will you nod off? Over there, in a corner, sad and lonely. Call us today at 1-800-444-KVETCH. That's 1-800-444-KVETCH. We are Meyerson, Kaufman, and Schwartz.
Classic Eugene Meyerson. Are you there?
Yeah. I don't know if anybody ever really heard that, because going back to what we were talking about early, like that was buried in the beginning of a show.
But I think back then we didn't have ads.
Yeah.
I think that was pre Aloe Oro. Aloe Oro came in after This American Life.
Right, right.
And in my recollection, the phone number was 444-4444.
No, it's 444 1-800-444-KVETCH.
I would have loved it to be. And then I think we should have changed it to 1-800-444-KVETCH or 1-800-444-4444. Like, because obviously 4444 isn't KVETCH, and that's too many letters anyway. But that was a classic one. And it makes me think of Dopey beefs. And the only Dopey beefs that I can think of were the original Omar Pinto Dopey beef with Chris, may he rest in peace. The sober guy beef with Chris, may he rest in peace. The Vice beef. Then all I can think of is the Cat Marnell beef, which was a one-sided Cat Marnell against us. What else was there?
Well, there was the Modi beef that you had a night. Yeah, you let that breathe well.
Yes.
With Chris. Yeah.
Yeah, the Modi beef. And Dopey Nation, I actually contacted Modi to come back on the show, and he declined.
Fucking Modi.
Any other beefs you can think of?
Yeah, I mean, I think that those were the highlights.
Wow. The Cat Marnell show was a pivotal show in your career on Dopey, wouldn't you say, Sam?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think just mostly because of the aftermath.
Oh, dude, no. Before we get to Cat Marnell, was Andy Dick pre-Cat Marnell? He was, right? You always loved the episodes with a Dopey anti-hero, like a Cat Marnell or an Andy Dick.
Yeah, I totally root for the anti-hero. I think that's why I love the show Succession so much.
Right, because there's no one on Succession you can root for. And Dopey, usually it's a good time person you can get behind. But with Andy Dick and Kat Marnell, the Dopey Nation turned on both of them.
For sure. That Andy Dick episode, I think when I on first listen, my feedback to you was, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? He's definitely drunk. He has no business being on the show. But I listened to it again, and I fucking loved it.
Why did you love it so much?
I just think because he is such a character. I mean, he really is, he is, he suffers from whatever he suffers from. And, hearing he was at a museum with his girlfriend and
he kept talking about how hot his girlfriend was.
Yeah. And he could have really given a shit, but I think he gave us some decent stories in there. And I think what I also like about Dopey in general are the dumb shit and the shenanigans that, happen when people are using and not using and in recovery. But I like the dumb shit component of Dopey as much as I like the drugs and addiction.
What are some of your favorite dumb shit components in general?
Well, I like a lot of your stories. I think that you put yourself in situations, especially in recovery. I think that, working with you and when you do solo monologues, I find your stories very funny because I think everybody can relate to them. Like, borrowing the neighbor's power tools and completely fucking them up. And,
I didn't tell you this. The neighbor who loaned me the rototiller moved. He redid his house and he moved to Savannah, Georgia.
Uh-huh.
And he sold all of his shit. All of his shit was on his front yard. We probably bought 5 statues of the Buddha from him. And he was selling the rototiller with the 40-foot extension cord, and I didn't buy it. I missed buying it. I was like, I'll buy it in a minute. And I went home, and when I got back, it had been sold.
Yeah, because I really loved hearing your stories, about how psyched you were to garden and all that stuff. And, it was such sort of good, sober storytelling, about what it's like now, which is the complete opposite, because you were not gardening in your house in Manhattan, your apartment, when you were covered in blood and
right,
fall your loft bed.
Right, that's for sure. And I barely gardened last year either because the demands of the Dopey Show and family and work became too crazy.
Right.
And Kat Marnell always had a special place in your heart.
I had no idea who Kat Marnell was before, I started working with you on the show. And, I quickly developed a crush on her. And her book was phenomenal. And she's way smarter than she seems. I think her act is, pretty solid. Because I don't know whether she's straight crazy or whether that's an act, but I think she's certainly smarter than she, wants to let on. And, I became a fan. I thought that interview that you did with her, I thought was great. There was nothing in that interview that would have led me, or I think the Dopey Nation, to believe that she would have turned on us like she did.
Wow, it was monumental. She did the interview. I didn't expect the Dopey Nation to hate her as much as they did. I just figured it was like she wrote an amazing book. For my money, one of my favorite drug memoirs I ever read. She had a unique and brilliantly funny voice that I couldn't have been more of a fan of this woman. And she gave me shit during the interview, but the interview still landed. And then the Dopey Nation hated her. And I think the reason that the Dopey Nation hated her so much was because she wasn't a cookie cutter sobriety finder. You know what I mean? And she didn't really want to tell her story in the way that so many people have made it their business to tell their story of recovery and redemption.
Right. And I think we also sort of connected the dots that she had claimed that she was off Adderall, but she, told you in the interview that she was still on it. And, the pieces weren't adding up. And so I think it's a lack of transparency and the genuine, desire to be sober or claim that you're in recovery. I felt it was interesting. Interestingly enough, as I just to hear myself talking, is I think that could have been something that led to the alt recovery movement.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, I think that, she had claimed that she was, being prescribed this. I think most people, that are on Adderall and
I don't think she was. I think she was on Vyvanse when she came on the show. But continue.
Maybe that's right, but I think that led to a discussion within the Dopey Nation about, you didn't know what I remember that you weren't a huge fan of medically assisted treatment in the early days with Chris. You didn't really know what it was and you didn't understand it.
No, it wasn't that. What it was I had been on so many different medical assisted treatment programs and I had abused all of them. And I had never used a medically assisted treatment style to success. Not even close.
Yeah, as prescribed, right?
Right. Yeah. Never even close. Like I was on methadone and I would cop dope to get before the methadone and I'd cop dope after the methadone. I'd get pills at the clinic. And then when I would be on Suboxone, I did the same shit and I would just get the Suboxone and get a prescription for it, get the pills and then get drugs and just keep the Suboxone just in case I couldn't get drugs, Right. So like I couldn't, I just thought it was bullshit. I thought everybody used it the way that I did. And to be totally transparent, Chris was very much the good guy on the show. And he was very super lovable and smart. And he, I think, had a better understanding of how medically assisted treatment worked than I did. So he was always emphasizing the positive value of it. And I was just like, you're full of shit, blah, 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 blah. And then
Yeah. Yeah. Like it doesn't work. I've tried it.
Right. Yeah. Right. It didn't work for me. And how could it work for anybody? But then to be honest was that after he died, I felt like the show would be in trouble if we weren't positive about medically assisted treatment because the stats were so in that medically assisted treatment worked. And then I also had that, do you remember the guy who came on the show, a guy who went to my high school, Jesse? He worked at a methadone clinic and he started giving me some information. And I heard from so many people in the Dopey Nation who actually had used Suboxone successfully or were still using it successfully. And I turned around because I kind of had to and because I had more exposure to other people's successes. So how did the Cat Marnell thing kick off the old alternate I can't even say the word alternative recovery movement?
Yes, that your dad has multiple patents on.
No, those are up. It's over.
Those fired. Okay, good. All right. Well, I don't know. I think it led to a broader discussion within the Dopey Nation who are really enlightened people. I have found over the years. I think that their discussions are sometimes heated, but I think they're all very smart. The discussions around Adderall and or Suboxone and or methadone and the importance that they have in one's recovery journey. We threw the term around in certain pieces of marketing, we called it the recovery spectrum, and who are we to judge? I think that was huge for me. It's who am I to judge? I'd never had a heroin issue. I was really just cocaine and alcohol. So there was really no sort of long-term treatment for that, medically assisted treatment for that. So it was very eye-opening to hear the discussions and read the discussions and participate in the discussions about, these alternative ways of recovery that are not based in 12-step.
Right. And then there were also the other abstinent-based programs that weren't based in 12-step too. But I think that I'm sad because I had you pull a bunch of clips and I don't see the Cat Marnell song in them.
Well, I think we played that enough.
No way. Where is it?
I don't know.
It's gone? So it's not gone. I just found it. Didn't take me long to find it either, huh?
Impressive.
Yeah, I didn't know where it was, so I went back to one of our great compilation episodes, the 5-year anniversary show, and I found the Cat Marnell apology song from Vladimir Putin Jr. And I remember, like, I felt so bad about the way the Cat Marnell thing had ended. And Sam, you didn't tell me you made the song; you just emailed it to me, and and I laughed my ass off. So I need to play it right now. Here's the apology song from Vladimir Putin Jr.
This is my apology song to Vladimir Putin Jr. I just don't know what I was thinking. It's just that Cat Marnell is so hot. Cat Marnell is so hot. I guess this one really got away from me. Especially when she said your whole name. Especially when she yada yada your whole email. I don't know what I was thinking. It's just that Cat Marnell is so hot and crazy. Cat Marnell is so hot and crazy.
She was so irreverent, and I just think that that's her brand. And anyway, it was remarkable. She went out of her way to find people connected to the Dopey Nation and to the Dopey podcast, and blocked everybody. She must have blocked 100 people on Twitter,
which she claimed were all me.
Yeah, and she thought that you were, creating these fake accounts, and
little did she know that I'm incapable of doing anything like that.
Right. But yeah, I will say to the Dopey Nation, while I'm on my hiatus, I'm going to do everything in my power to get Cat Marnell back.
Is that true, or is that hyperbole?
It is true.
Well, I anticipate Cat Marnell coming back. And that's another thing that I think is just interesting. It was like Cat Marnell came on a while ago. It was a long time ago. And I remember it was the beginning of COVID, and we weren't going to have anybody on for a while in person. So I had reached out to her to call in and give her COVID report. And that's when she turned on me. That's when she posted on Twitter that I'm like a fucking Howard Stern whack packer and this and that. And it was in the beginning of COVID that this renewed beef with Cat Marnell was born.
Yeah, I wonder what that timing meant for that.
I don't know. Yeah. I reached out from my personal Instagram to her, and she didn't know who I was. And then I was like, "Can we be friends?" And she blocked me.
Right.
She'll be back. She'll be back. 100%. So when you look back at your storied Dopey producing career, like what else stands out to you?
Well, I think it's probably the most important thing, and I think you will probably agree, is that after Chris died, Andrew and Leah and Paulina and Catherine starting the Dopey Nation Facebook group.
No, not Liam. It was Andrew, Catherine, Paulina, and Leah, not Liam.
Leah.
Yeah.
I thought I meant Leah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I think that's is one of the coolest things that I've ever experienced. Had nothing to do with me. It had everything to do with you and Chris, and the way that people mourned Chris's death. Is with those guys founding the Dopey Nation and creating a space where they could connect with each other. Yeah.
And this Dopey Zoom thing in the history of COVID as the next chapter of it. And we just did a Dopey Patreon Zoom last week, and it was really fun. And it was really like beautiful. And you were missed. And I still, even though you're on hiatus, I implore you to come onto one of these Dopey Zooms again.
Okay.
And you could tell your story again.
I feel like my story is pretty exhausted. And I just will say, just with everybody that ever comes on the show, or anybody that, tries to summarize their entire life, using history, drinking history, trauma history, it's really hard to spit it out in a coherent way. So thanks for hanging in here with me and Dave, while I tried to do that today and have done in the past. And it's a really tricky thing. The whole podcasting interview scenario is it's unusual.
You saying this is going to make me jump ahead for a second, because there's big news in the doposphere. And Sam also he invented the term the doposphere. right?
I
Hold on, can you hear the applause?
I hear that.
I can't hear it for some reason. So Sam invented the word doposphere, and this is big news. You ready, Sam? You know the news, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Yeah.
In the beginning of December, I went to Los Angeles to and should I tell the story now?
Yeah.
All right, so I went to Los Angeles because in the beginning of I listen, obviously if you listen to this show and you're a hardcore listener of the show, you know that I have severe mental illness. We made jokes that Chris had SMI, whatever, but I have severe mental illness. I'm fucked up. And one of the things that I do that's fucked up is I'm relentless. And sometimes it serves the show, and sometimes it might be serving the show, but it's bad for me. And I go crazy. And I did this, and I still to this day do it with Artie Lang. Like, I'm relentless with him, even though he's, not reciprocal. Is that the word I'm looking for?
Yeah, he does not reciprocate your zeal for him.
No, although he did. I mean, just the fact that he wrote back to me recently and then never wrote back to me again is kind of off-putting. And I'd say, like, most of the really good guests that we've ever had, we got because of my insanity, basically.
For sure.
So, like, I was like that with Maron, and Mark Maron had come on the show, because of some crazy, God shot synchronous moment in the universe, and it was amazing. And then I kind of wanted to remain friends with him, which went badly. And I wanted to keep up a communication with him, which went badly. So finally, I developed some kind of self-respect, and I stopped reaching out to him. So after not reaching out for a while, I reached out, and he wanted to come to Katz's, and he came to Katz's, and I bought him lunch, and he invited me to go on his show. And what he said was, anytime you're in LA, give me a call, and you can come on the show. And I was like, I have 2 kids. I work in a deli. I'm not going to just be in LA. Just tell me when to come on. And we wound up getting a date, and I went out and I recorded Mark Maron's show with him. And just the way you're describing your experience, talking about your drug history, was exactly what my experience on his show was.
Yeah, it never goes as smoothly as you have it sort of mapped out in your head.
Well, I had all sorts of ideas, like I was going to talk about the Othello cookie, and I was going to talk about this. And instead, it became this extended talk about me fucking up over and over and over. And he's just like, dude, let's get on with it. Like, he had just interviewed Halle Berry, and I'm like, and then I was in Florida, and I'm, it's like, it wasn't a traditional Mark Maron interview, and it was something I always wanted to do. And I wound up feeling exactly the way you feel now being here.
Right. Well, you are a professional podcaster. I will say that you are. And you have a lot of great skills, and you guide the show. It's your job to guide the interview. So the guest is really at the mercy about how you want to move forward within the interview. So in this case, me just now, you on Mark Maron's show, you had to experience that same thing, and it's not an easy prospect, my friend.
No, so Dopey Nation, this week on Thursday, supposedly my episode of What the Fuck is coming out. So stay tuned and stand down, my friends. Me brethren.
Yeah, that's huge news. I mean, to me, this is as big as This American Life or the BBC interview or, any huge, gigantic milestones that have ever happened in the doposphere.
Except that I'm experiencing that horrible shame feeling of having not had a great experience. I mean, it was awesome to go there, and he was really cool, and it was awesome to meet him. I'm just scared like I wasn't good.
Yeah, well, just knowing you as I know you and having worked so intimately for the last 3.5 years, it's always better than you think it is. I mean, Dopey Nation, I get calls from Dave, sort of not on the daily, but, very often it's like, I've got a problem, or, it's not going well. But I think that's what you had said to me. It's your, what would you say? It's not the dark passenger. What's Gabor Mate's?
Oh, the stupid friend.
The stupid friend. Yeah, that's your stupid friend is really prevalent.
Right. And the stupid friend is negative self-talk. Like, I'm an idiot. This sucks. It's not good. Blah, blah, blah. And that shit runs me all the time, And in some ways, I always, and I talk about this at meetings all the time, is like, I feel like fear keeps me honest. And like fear is like this amazing filter so that the quality, I mean, don't you think that my fear helps make the show better sometimes, or would you say no?
I would say it has a negative effect in general. I mean, I think that, I think there's healthy fear, but the fear that I know that you have, is so irrational to me, because I know you're good. The listeners, Dopey Nation, everybody knows that you're good. And it's just a question of you, convincing yourself and kicking the stupid friend out the car moving at 60 miles an hour. You just need to eject that fucker.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I think that's like another thing, just moving forward into the new year. Like, I'm not big on New Year's resolutions or anything. And like another thing that just happened was I injured my foot last week, and I think I like strained a tendon playing with the kids, and then I walked on it too much and it hurt. And I'm Googling like, what could this be? And gout came up as a potential reason for it.
And diabetes.
Well, no, let's get to the diabetes in a second. And first I was like, it didn't look like gout in the pictures. And then you read about gout, and all I could read about was like gout was from if you eat too much organ meat or like liver and stuff. And I was like, I don't eat any organ meat, or too much rich meat. And I was like, I don't eat that much rich meat. And then I'm limping around the house, and like I'm putting all of my weight on one side of my foot. And I wound up stepping on one of Susan's hair clips that's got like a little piece of metal sticking out. And I stepped on it so hard. It just hurt so bad. And after that, the rest of my foot blew up, and it looked like gout. And then also, if you Google foot pain, diabetic foot comes up. And I was certain that I had diabetic foot. And people, like, I know somebody who had his foot cut off because of diabetic foot. And then Linda starts reading about gout, and one of the big things in there is like too much sugar. And like I've made eating sweets like shtick. Like it's my drug of choice at this point. Sweets are my drug of choice at this point.
Definitely.
So I'm going into the new year. Like, we used to like make a joke about the Dopey Fitness Challenge as a thing, and we never really followed through with it. Even though like I did start doing like hundreds of push-ups every day and hundreds of sit-ups every day. But I'm ready, like, and I did this stupid keto thing, for an extended period on the show, which was all for cosmetic weight loss purposes. But I want 2022, as Sam takes his extended hiatus for his own pursuit, spiritual, physical, mental, and creative. I want to make it 2022 is the year of fitness, or year of healthiness, healthy year. Like,
yeah.
I want to figure out a way to do it so I can still do on the YouTube channel, though, that I do Ben and Jerry's tastings. Is that possible?
Yeah, well, I think you just do small spoonfuls, because I know that is your goal to, have a dopey flavor, which I think that would be awesome.
Linda just tested positive for COVID. Hold on. That's the other big news in real time. Today is Friday, New Year's Eve day, December 31st, 2021. Sam is quitting the show. I am going on Mark Maron next week, and Linda just tested positive for COVID.
Wow, those are huge headlines.
Huge headlines. A lot of news.
Yeah. I
was sure I had COVID this week too, but I took a rapid test and it was negative. You say false negative?
I'd say that at home, from what I understand, at home COVID tests provide a lot of false negatives, but they don't provide false positives. So I'm sure she has it, probably, and hopefully that you and the family and the girls don't have it.
Well, the good news is we don't have to go anywhere. I just hope we can watch TV the whole time.
Yeah. Well, what a way to ring in the new year with COVID
And television.
and television.
So, Sam, we're winding down the New Year's Eve show. Why don't we talk about some of your New Year's resolutions?
Well,
do you like New Year's resolutions?
I do, actually. I've come across a bunch of New Year's resolutions from the past that somehow I managed to save. And
How did you save them?
In a shoebox.
Nice.
Or like stuffed in a book. But they're all things like learn to play guitar and learn to speak Spanish and, shit like that. That are young man's pursuits, David.
Right.
And so this year, I was mentioning earlier that, I haven't been happy. I have been resentful. I've been living in like fucking a world of resentment. And, and I don't know what that's about, but I want to find out. And I want to be liberated from the poison and the toxic of my past. And, learn how to live in the moment and learn how to live in joy. I know that sounds pretty trite, and
how could it sound trite? Maybe it sounds a little bit cheesy, but it's like all we could want to do is live in joy. That's how it's like. What else is there?
Yeah, and I haven't been for a number of years. And
would you say the last 3 years to be exact?
3 years, 4 months, and 2 weeks
to be exact.
No, it had nothing to do with that. It's just where I'm at, I think, in this current period of sobriety. And I just think as I'm getting older and I'm looking at, a shorter lifespan than the one I've already lived. And that's weird to say, but, I want to make the most of it. I want to live each day happy and productive. And, it's all about moving forward. And so I definitely want to put the past behind me. And, I want to be a better guy and nicer to my friends and family and, all that. So I'm going to do some introspection. I'm actually going to be working with a sort of a groovy guru. I live in the mountains.
So I've always thought you hated groovy gurus.
This guy's really different.
He's groovier than your average groovy guru?
Yeah, he's way more low key, and it's just every word has like gravitas and meaning, and I understand what he's saying. And I think that I think we're also different. And like when we go to treatment and we go to a rehab center and we get treated like we're cookies in a cookie factory, and their treatment is cookie cutter. And
can you stop talking about cookies, please?
Yes, Diabito. That we all respond to things that we need. So like I don't respond to aggression therapy. I respond to a loving, sort of nurturing kind of therapist. And so I've found a guy up here, and I'm going to be working with him. And I don't know what that's going to look like and how often I'm going to see him. But I'm just looking forward to, being at peace with my past, with my present, and hopefully a productive future.
And do you anticipate coming back to the Dopey Show repurposed and galvanized?
Perhaps. I don't know what's in store in these coming months and or years, but Dopey's always going to be in my heart, and so will you, and everybody associated with the show and the Dopey Nation. So we'll see, Dave.
Now let me ask you this: as a soothsayer, I don't know if that's the right expression, but as a prognosticator, what do you, even though you will be taking a step away from the doposphere for an extended period of time, and we have no idea how long that will be for, what do you see in the upcoming year in the doposphere?
Whoa, I don't know, man. I see you hustling like you've always hustled. I think you're going to have to hustle a little harder.
Jeez.
Yeah. But I think that just means when you're at, making the show, I don't think you can hustle harder trying to get guests or, do the best interview that you can, because I think you're maxed out on that. And I think you'll continue to do that. I think it's just me as a security blanket for you throughout various processes. You're going to have to just fill those holes. But I know you can do it. And I see bigger guests. I see some old guests coming back.
Do you see Jake the Snake Roberts returning perhaps this year?
Is he still alive?
I think he is still alive. What do you see? Do you see Cat Marnell coming back this year? Yay or nay, Soothsayer Sam?
I say yay. I say at the end of 2022.
Would you think that you might come out of retirement for the Cat Marnell refurbished Dopey episode?
Fuck yeah.
Do you see Downtown Ray Brown ever returning to the show?
I can't say for certain.
Outlook not so good.
My crystal ball is very fuzzy.
Okay, how about Robert Downey Jr.? Do you see him coming to the Dopey Show this year?
No.
Okay. How about, who else have I always wanted to get on Dopey?
Keith Richards.
Yeah,
it's a hard.
Yeah, it's a hard no. Who else we got? Do you think Artie will return to Dopey in 2022?
I do. I think I know that he's got a show back up on track. But I just don't see that going anywhere, and I think he needs the Dopey effect for him.
Yeah, Sam's never been the biggest Artie fan, just to keep it at 100, as they say in the street.
I have never found Artie to be particularly funny.
I love Artie.
But I'm rooting for him. I want him to stay sober. I want him to, continue making comedy for his fans that love him, because I know that there's a ton of them. But I do see him. I mean, I literally think that if he came on and did a good performance on the Dopey Show, that it would help his own podcast.
Do you think it would? You think we could galvanize the career of the great Artie Lang?
I do. I think that.
Do you think Dopey is the greatest addiction recovery, podcast out there, Samuel?
After
Church and Other Drugs, Rehab Confidential,
Other Drugs, and the Share podcast, I think it's top 3.
Fucking. What about Recovery in the Middle Ages?
That's a pretty sweet one too.
It's all bad. Fucking Left Coast.
We'll put you in the top 10.
Top 10. Bottom of the top 10. So what else you got? You want to do this this exclusive reading of the Dopey Facebook post before we go? Or you want to be done?
No, let's read the Facebook post.
And also, before we do, I want to say, Dopey Nation, send in emails, send in voicemails to dopeypodcast@gmail.com. I will be sending socks for any voicemails that played. And also, if your voicemail played and I haven't sent you socks, send me another email with your address reminding me to send you socks, because I need that.
Dave, why is it on the Dopey Nation to remind you to make good on that?
Because if I don't remember, what am I supposed to do? Just never send it? Or can I get a reminder?
Well, I know, but you shouldn't need a reminder.
You shouldn't need a year of spiritual rejuvenation. We all need something. What the fuck? Everyone needs a little bit of help. How can I do everything?
Because you like to do everything.
I need help. Okay? Dopey Nation, if I owe you socks, write in an email. Just write me a fucking email. I'll send you the socks. If I owe anyone anything, please remind me. If you guys want Dopey merch, we've got amazing Dopey merch on dopeypodcast.com. I also have incredible beanies, hats, and socks sitting on the shelf. I need to sell them, so please buy them. And then if I don't ship them, please remind me to ship them. Also, our YouTube channel is on fire, so please subscribe to the Dopey YouTube channel as well. And now Sam will read this amazing post on Facebook that we found. You ready, Sam?
Yeah, I need to put it up. Okay, this is Jesse's Facebook post.
In the Dopey Nation Facebook group.
Posted on the Dopey Nation. So I had a really horrendous experience when I first got to the rooms, in quotes. I was living in a recovery house that cost $170 a week. Yikes. And the girls who had been living there already didn't seem very welcoming to anyone. There were requirements, of course. You had to do a 90 and 90 intensive outpatient, get a sponsor, home group, do the steps, and if you didn't do those things, you couldn't stay. There was an 18-year-old girl there, Summer. Summer decided she didn't want to stay, and the house director caught wind of it and basically kicked her out, saying, why even waste our water one more night? Summer left and died. I got a sponsor, did the steps, but something just didn't feel right. I was told I had to make friends outside of the house. I really only had 1 or 2 solid friends, and one was my roommate. I already have social anxiety, but I figured, fuck it, what's the worst that could happen? These girls look happy, so I go out on a limb, I introduce myself to people, try to make friends, but nothing stuck. The people in that town were already in their own impenetrable posses. After I finished the steps, I wrote another 4 steps solely on the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Because, bitch, I had some resentments. And you know what? They were never settled. And I don't care anymore. There are articles upon articles on how 12-step might have been the cure 75 years ago. But it's dated now, especially for a heroin fentanyl addict in 2021. I'm sorry, but when I read the big book, I laugh. I can't relate to somebody putting milk in their whiskey to try and cut down. And I know I'm not alone. That's the reason I love Dopey so much. I got my medical marijuana card in 2019 for opiate dependency, and I am so grateful that my state acknowledged that cannabis can be used as a tool for some of us. I just wanted to say it's okay to be 100% abstinent if that's what you have to do, but what's not okay is making people who don't make that same choice feel like shit for it. Thank you for letting me share. Jesse.
It's a great post.
I think it's a really great post, too.
I don't think that they put milk in the whiskey to cut the whiskey down. I think it was his surreptitious way to think he could drink, though.
Yeah, I don't even know what that was about. I think it's just because I do. I think it's if you can drink like a gentleman, or you can drink beer or drink wine and not hard liquor, I think, or maybe it was his breakfast. I don't know. But I think the one thing that I do identify with is that it is an old text. And there are things that don't necessarily relate to, modern society, and especially young people in society. And and there's a lot more in there.
There's so much I could relate to in this post. And I have some jealousy in the post. Like, there was no option to get a cannabis card when I was getting out of my opiate addiction. I would have gotten a cannabis card in a second to deal with my opiate addiction. And I have some, I was in the gas station it was Christmas Eve. It was Christmas Day, right? And I was going to the gas station to buy Diet Coke to drink at my in-laws' house, and they passed recreational weed in New York last year. And I had this moment at the gas station where I was like, holy shit, they probably sell weed vapes in the gas station now, And I had this, I had like a moment, like all of a sudden, like in my head, I was like, I could buy a weed vape right now and no one would know. And like, it was crazy moment.
Well, yeah. And didn't you just say that they have food trucks that are actually like weed dispensaries on the street in front of Katz's?
Yeah, but that feels like going to like a spot. This didn't feel like that.
Right.
And listen, I'm happy in my abstinence. I loved smoking weed. I have a great romantic view of my stonerdom, but I'm happy in my abstinence, and my abstinence has made it possible to make this show, to do the things that I do, to be a good father, to do what I'm doing. Like, abstinence is pretty much required in order for me to keep going the way that I'm going. But I love the way that Jessie described her experience, and I love that she feels like that Dopey is open like that, because we want it to be open, and we want it to be inclusive, and we want people to be comfortable with their reality, and that we don't preach anything. And like, the original doctrine of Dopey was let your freak flag fly.
It should always be the doctrine, for everybody, always.
Exactly. So I like that. I do really appreciate her post and her membership in the Doposphere. And, when I ask for emails and voicemails, the real reason I ask for it is because it shows your participation in this world that we've created. And like, I know a ton of people listen, and I hear from people all the time, but when we can play your shit in the show, it's deeper than that. And I don't want the show to end, because I don't want it to be your last show, Sam. It makes me sad.
Yeah, I'm always a phone call or an email or
You think I'm going to start emailing you now?
You can slide into my DMs, Dave. That's okay.
I don't.
Although, another thing that I am doing for my mental fucking health is that I am going to take a leave of absence from all social media too.
So how long are you going to tweet that you got off of Facebook and Instagram before you're done?
I'm not. I'm gonna. For those that I don't want to lose contact with, I'm going to reach out and say that I'm leaving and that, here's my contact info, and I'd rather connect that way than through social media.
Well, I've packed my bags. I'm ready to go.
Right.
So when are you leaving social media?
Well, as soon as all that's done, but probably tomorrow. Actually.
Wow. So first the Doposphere, then social media. Yeah.
Well, yes, but there's a gazillion reasons why I'm doing all of it, but it all boils down to just mental and spiritual fitness. And
do you anticipate me calling you this week to get help on the show?
Oh, fuck yeah.
I will not ask for help this week on the show. I will respect your boundaries. I will not put myself in that position to be rejected by your boundaries.
Well, good. And you are in a position, I think you are fully set up to
flourish,
to kick ass and flourish as a professional podcaster.
No, I've been doing it for many years.
I know. So, I can understand that, we have been a great team. We've gone through a lot and the show's evolved, and this is just another chapter.
It is another chapter, and it's like I cannot thank you enough, and tell you. I mean, like, I'm mostly nervous. Like when Chris died, I was mostly nervous about how would the show be fun after Chris died, and you helped me make the show fun. You brought fun to my process, and now I'm mostly like, I'm not worried about how to do an interview or how to put a show together. I'm worried about how to enjoy the process without having you to call and talk about it all the time.
Right. Well, I'm certain it'll be less fun, but it will evolve into a way that you will be able to make it fun.
I'll figure something out, because that's what life is. We got to adapt. We got to grow. And like, you are available if I'm fucked. I know that you're my friend and I can reach out to you. I just can't. I can't decide that that's the process anymore.
Right.
Anyway, it's been a wild year. Linda has COVID. I probably have COVID. The kids probably have COVID.
Don't have.
You don't have COVID.
I don't.
So you want to close this one out? Last one of the year. Last one for a while from you.
Yeah, Dopey Nation, everybody around the Doposphere and listeners of the Dopey podcast, it's been my sincere honor and privilege, and to be of service. Really, this is my service work, as bullshit as it is. It's kept me connected. It's kept me around recovery and addiction, which is a place that I always need to stay near. In the future, I can't forget that who I am really, and I won't. And
before you cut it off, though, wouldn't you say I taught you a lot about the world of podcasting?
Yeah. I'd never really listened to a podcast before I listened to the Dopey podcast.
Me neither.
With you and Chris, I know. So it's been fun.
It has been fun.
Yeah.
All right. So,
all right. Did
I fuck up you taking us out?
No, I can go ahead and say it. And one thing that I've always wanted Dave to say, but he's never said it, is this: Mantente fuerte, nación dope, which is Spanish for "Stay strong, Dopey Nation."
Thank you. I'm sorry. You want to do toodles for Chris in Spanish too? Toodles de Chris.
Toodles para Chris.
Si, senor. Claro que si. Thank you, Sam. The show would not have been the show it's been for the past 3 years and 4 months without you. You've done amazing work. I love you, and I appreciate everything you've done. And Dopey Nation, onward and upward, Excelsior, we'll do our best. Fucking stay strong, everybody, and fucking toodles for Chris. And happy fucking New Year. But before we go, Sam has always contributed a lot of stuff to the show. But for some reason, I find this original composition set to as a parody to the Cheers theme really, really makes me feel emotional. Sam, do you have a comment about this before we go?
No, I think it's pretty fitting, though. So all I will say is cheers. Cheers for everything. Cheers to you, Dave. Cheers to Alan, Linda, everybody, Ray, Aurora, all the usual suspects and unusual suspects. Happy New Year and cheers.
Are you feeling emotional now, Sam?
Yeah, a little bit.
All right. And you guys ready to cry your eyes out? Here's Sam's rendition of Cheers. Stay strong and happy New Year. Fucking toodles for Chris.
Trying to score from the plug today. I sure could use a shot. Xannies are helping, but I need more. Guess I'll smoke some pot. I'm about to go insane. Sometimes I need to go where everybody does cocaine. And we always find a vein. I want to fix and do some blow. The troubles will go away. I want to be where everybody does cocaine. You shoot your dope, I'll smoke some crack. Junkies are all the same. I want to be where everybody does cocaine.
I want to take a walk around the world. I wonder would it do me any good? Until I get some money in my pocket, then I guess I'll just have to walk around my neighborhood. But I want to be good so bad. Want to be so good, so bad, so bad. I want to be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. And I want to take a ride up in the sky. Watch as aeroplanes just pass me by. And I want to see a Lear jetliner take a dive, just to show all of these people what it means to be alive. But I want to be good so bad. Want to be so good, so bad, so bad. I want to be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. And my shadow's getting smaller and smaller. And it's time to know where I stand. Shadow's getting smaller and smaller. And it's time to know where I stand. And I wonder would they pay it any mind when I leave this busted city far behind. I'll take the high road, however far it winds, because peace and love are very, very, very hard to find. And I want to be good so bad. Want to be good so bad, so bad. I want to be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. Damn it, all these suckers make me mad. And it's all I ever had. And it's all I ever had. And these suckers make me mad, and I want to call my dad. And it's all I ever had. 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 And these suckers make me mad, and it's all I ever had. And I want to call my dad. And it's all I ever had. And it's all I ever had. And it's all I ever had.